In today's video, we're talking about some trades involving the Montreal Canadiens and the Calgary Flames. We have a ton of other news today as well, including a new captain in Winnipeg, a new captain coming soon in Calgary. We have some injury updates and some players and off-season stuff. Big situation involving Mike Babcock, as well as a big situation involving Sabres owner Terry Pegula. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a ton of news to talk about today. Some really interesting off-ice stuff and some captains being named, a signing. We have tryouts, a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. So let's dive right in and get started. First up, I want to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights. They've hired Nick Holden. So essentially Nick Holden, who last played for the last couple of years with the Ottawa Senators, he's retired, and he's now been hired by the Golden Knights to work on their player development department. I know Holden was, I think, looking forward to possibly trying to play this year, but obviously things did not materialize. And rather than, probably take a chance going on a PTO somewhere, he had a chance to get a job in Vegas. Of course, he used to play in Vegas. He played there for a couple seasons before coming to the Senators, so certainly clearly liked the organization and liked living there, so he'll head back and become a player development representative. So good on Nick Holden, and congrats on a pretty solid career. We also got some news today out of Vegas regarding a PTO. They have officially announced that Max Comtois, formerly of the Anaheim Ducks, who was not qualified as a restricted free agent and made a UFA, will be attending training camp with Vegas on a PTO. That was something that was rumored and that we had talked about before. Comtois had been previously linked to the Golden Knights, so that's now made official. Another PTO as well, the Edmonton Oilers are bringing in former Detroit Red Wing and Tampa Bay Lightning forward Adam Ernie. He gets a PTO with the Oilers. Now, as I mentioned, we have a signing too. The Colorado Avalanche have signed Tomas Tatar on a one-year deal of $1.5 million. That's an absolute steal for what Tatar can give you as a depth player, third-line guy, responsible two-way player who can produce offensively. Can probably expect 40, 50 points out of him. To me, that's an absolutely wicked signing, steal of a deal. The last few days, we had heard about Tatar that he changed agents, and according to the NHL insiders, he was heading to an Eastern team. He wanted to stay East. Well, clearly they got that one wrong. He goes to Colorado, and I absolutely love that signing for them. A great move on their part to get a deeper forward group. I am sure there's other teams out there that if they would have known they could have maybe made that work, that they're probably kicking themselves for not trying to bring Tatar in for that price. News out of Winnipeg today. The Winnipeg Jets have announced that they have a new captain, and that's Adam Lowry. No huge surprise there. I knew Adam Lowry would be one of the top candidates to get that honor in Winnipeg. Josh Morrissey being the other option that I thought was a pretty good choice as well. Morrissey and Mark Scheifele will continue to wear the A's for the Winnipeg Jets. Lowry's, of course, been there his whole career. A really solid third-line center. Good size, plays hard, leads by example on the ice, and he's your prototypical guy. Like, I think, especially last year, I think it was pretty evident that Lowry was, if not the leader, but definitely one of the top guys taking on a leadership role with the team. And I think the Winnipeg Jets have made themselves a solid choice, good character player. The Calgary Flames are another team that's expected to announce a new captain. GM Craig Conroy has confirmed that they do intend to do so. Didn't have a timeline on it, just that they would likely do so before the season starts. All indications right now that the next captain of the Calgary Flames is most likely to be Swedish defenseman Rasmus Andersson. If Michael Backlund changes his mind and decides to sign an extension with the Flames, I think they'll probably give him the C for a few years at least, however long he signs. But if he still goes into the season unsigned, Anderson's the most likely candidate. As I mentioned as well, the Montreal Canadiens have been busy. They've obviously had their golf tournament yesterday. They had some other things on the go today, including some availability with Carey Price. And Carey Price did confirm publicly that he definitely is indeed done playing hockey. There's not going to be a comeback. He said that his knee on a day-to-day basis is okay. He said he can get through daily activity for the most part, and he's all right. But whenever he tries to attempt any kind of strenuous activity, that he can do short spells, but not the rigors of like a full season. Anytime he's tried to test it with any kind of prolonged strenuous activity, it acts up and gives him a lot of issues. So the knee is just not going to fully heal and recover enough for him to return and play. So the remaining time of his contract, he will be on LTIR. He was blatantly asked as well, how do you feel about the possibility of the Montreal Canadiens trading your contract? That's something we've talked about here on the channel in the past couple of days, that there's been some speculation that that's something that Ken Hughes and the Habs are likely thinking about, and it may not happen right away. I don't think it's going to be like super soon, but I wouldn't be shocked if either by the deadline or next offseason that we do see them move on from Price's contract and try to get themselves out of LTIR. They did the same thing with former captain Shea Weber, and of course it only makes sense. And Price said essentially, he's like, listen, he says, I'm always going to be a Montreal Canadian. Clearly I'm never going to play anywhere else. I understand this is a business perspective, and if they need to do that, I'm here to do whatever I can to help this team and help the franchise. So he clearly would have no issues with that. I mean, I know where he had a no move clause. I believe he'd still be required to waive, but he certainly seems to be very much open to that. I know in some cases for players too, the only thing they really look at is based on the market that's going to hold their contract. Is it going to impact their take-home pay or not? And really, Montreal is a fairly highly taxed area. I don't know that there'd really be any teams where he'd make less money per se. So I don't think that would really play a role or be a factor for him. Now, as I mentioned, we also have some other stuff to talk about today. We got news today from the St. Louis Blues that Torrey Krug is injured. Apparently, he had a training type of injury happen with one of his, I think it was his left foot, and he is likely going to miss some time. He may not miss all of training camp, or could maybe even drag on to the point that he misses the beginning of the season. At this point, it's kind of hard to exactly evaluate because it's fairly new. But right now, the prognosis kind of looks like he's probably missing most or all of camp, maybe the beginning of the season. If he does drag on and miss the beginning of the season, then it shouldn't be too long into the season before he can get in the lineup and play. But Torrey Krug will definitely not be there for, like I said, a good chunk of camp, which is going to obviously impact things, but certainly will impact some of the younger defensemen, like a Scott Perunovich comes to mind, who might be able to benefit from some extra reps and playing time in his absence. We also got word, as well as I mentioned, there's a couple of other things going on off the ice, which not things you hear about every day. They're not usual, normal hockey situations. But the Buffalo Sabres owner, Terry Pegula, is being accused of some pretty nasty things. He's being accused of racism. Now, this is not related to the NHL, because he also was owner of the Buffalo Bills. This is an NFL issue, but of course he's an NHL owner as well, so I wanted to talk about it. I seen word today because there was news and statements put out through the different sports teams in Buffalo, the Bills and Sabres social media regarding this. But essentially, there's a lawsuit that the NFL is facing, and in that lawsuit, it names some particular people, including Terry Pegula, who is accused in this lawsuit of making racial remarks, which he's accused of saying that if the black players don't like it here, they should go back to Africa and see how bad it is. And referencing the fact we're talking, like, that was in reference to NFL players protesting against racial injustice. So when you've seen players kneel to the national anthem and things like that, that's kind of what that's in regards to. And the context behind it, obviously, if true, that's a pretty nasty thing to say, and he denies it. He's put out a statement saying that it's absolutely not true, but that is something that's out there, and he's, I guess, fighting back to try to protect his name here. We also had word today against some pretty weird and somewhat serious allegations against Mike Babcock, and we do have an update on that. Earlier today, I put out a video. The information came from Paul Bissonnette and the Spit and Chicklets podcast, where they had revealed that he had word from NHL players and members of the Blue Jackets told him that Mike Babcock was calling players into his office and saying, hey, I want to get to know you better. Let me look through your phone. I want to look through your pictures and things like that. Which seems really bizarre, really weird. Anyways, they have on a podcast and what he's posted on social media, and Paul Bissonnette has kind of doubled down on several players have told him this. This is not like a case of one player saying it and any possibility of there being any kind of misinterpretation of anything. Mike Commodore, former NHL player, has also chimed in saying he has been told the same things and that they're 100% true. According to them, Mike Babcock and Boone Jenner was a player that was mentioned by Bissonnette on the podcast of one of these examples. Jenner and Babcock put out statements through the Columbus Blue Jackets earlier denying this, essentially saying that what Babcock said was that he was having meetings with players and he was trying to get to know them better, and he did ask them about pictures, but it wasn't a case of saying, hey, give me your phone, I want to look through it. It was a case of them having conversations and saying, like, show me some pictures of your family if you don't mind. I just want to get to know you better. That's what Babcock says. Boone Jenner so far has corroborated his story. Puts the player in a very awkward situation that even if it was true, I wouldn't want to be Boone Jenner. I mean, that's a tough spot to be in. Like, you got Mike Babcock's career kind of in your hands here, and if you come out and say, yeah, this was weird and awkward and I didn't like it, well, that's going to be a whole different situation. And we know the typical hockey mentality is to not acknowledge it, to kind of handle it internally. Like, so I'm not saying that Babcock and Jenner are lying. I'm just saying that, obviously people right now feel like Bissonnette and Commodore are telling the truth, but were they given bad information? That's always a possibility. You just never know. It's an awkward situation. And so far, like I said, they're coming clean. I don't think anything's going to come from it now, because certainly as long as the Blue Jackets are comfortable with what he's had to say about it, then I don't imagine why they would go any further with it. But just the fact that Mike Babcock hasn't even coached a game yet, hasn't even opened a training camp yet, and has returned to the NHL, and he's already being accused of things. So I don't know. It's an interesting situation that's been, at this point, the story's kind of, where I think we're kind of becoming dead, because it's not a case of like it's been denied, and I'm not really sure there's much to say, but it's really weird and interesting how this all came about. And I guess, like I said to some other people, is like, you know what, if there is any truth to it and they're denying it, then people are going to keep talking and something eventually will get out, you would think. So, not the type of start to his Jackets coaching career that he was probably hoping for. On to some other topics here. There's a couple of weird things obviously happen off the ice today, which are not, like I said, not things you see every day. A few trade things I want to talk about as well. There was the article from the Bleacher Report with some trade predictions. Now, these are all players that have been mentioned in the rumor mill. There's been a lot of talk that these players very well likely could be moved. And they made 5 predictions. I'm only going to talk about 2 of them. And I put a link of the article in the pinned comment. If you want to look through it, I may talk about some of the other predictions that they've made possibly in the next day or two. But for today, I want to look at Carter Hart and Noah Hanifin. They predict that Carter Hart of the Philadelphia Flyers will be traded to the Montreal Canadiens. The return package going to the Habs, or from the Habs, to the Flyers, would include a goaltender like Casey DeSmith, a top prospect, and a second-round pick. They have lots of draft currency. They have lots of prospects. It doesn't necessarily, specify which prospect, but they've got plenty. I mean, outside of your absolute grade A ones that you want to keep, like your Lane Hudson and your Slavkovsky, you still have guys like Owen Beck, which they probably prefer not to trade. You've got, Arbor Jacki for some, not really a prospect anymore. He played enough last year, but got a lot of young D for sure. You've got Philip Missar. Like, there's lots of interesting names in the Habs system for sure. Joshua Waugh is another one. Riley Kidney. I'm not sure who the Flyers would be interested in, but you throw in a goaltender, a good prospect that they like, in a fairly high pick. That might be enough to get it done. Now, of course, the Flyers would be having a goalie coming in and out. They also have Cal Peterson, Sammy Erson on file, and Samstrom as well. Peterson, although I suspect, will play in the minors. So it'd be a little bit of a goalie jam there, but they could flip maybe one of their goalies to another team too. And Montreal would still be in the same predicament. They'd still have a 3-goalie system with Montembeault, Allen, and now Hart. So if they get Carter Hart, to me, they're not likely going to trade Montembeault. I would think at that point that Allen would be next in a separate trade to go to another team. At least that would be my suspicion. It really doesn't make sense for the Habs to have Hart, Montembeault, and Allen. Of course, if this happens in season, like these trade predictions were meant to be, then certainly I would think that, there could be injuries and other factors that we just don't know yet as well, which could certainly change our views and opinions. But what are your thoughts on a Carter Hart trade to Montreal? Is that a good return? Do you see that trade moving forward? Let me know your thoughts in the comments on that one. The other one was Noah Hanifin, one of the top defensemen available in the trade market, to the Buffalo Sabres. And the return offer here includes defenseman Henry Jokiharju, a top prospect like Isaac Rosen, and a second-round pick. Now, the Sabres are pretty loaded in prospects, and they have a fairly deep forward group as it stands. A lot of these Sabres prospects that are not in the NHL yet, there's definitely going to be a few of them they can move, because they're not all going to be able to be Sabres. Like, there's a lot of roster spots already taken up by fairly young players as it is now. So, Jokiharju, obviously not as high end of a defenseman as Hanifin, but certainly somebody who could play lower in the Flames lineup. They get Rosen, who's a good prospect, and a second rounder. I mean, they may have to up the ante there. I don't know. It depends on how the Flames feel about Rosen. If they really like Rosen as a prospect, then maybe that gets the deal done. But again, I've mentioned before Hanifin to Buffalo being a real solid, strong possibility. They're one of the main teams that are looking for a top 4D, and he does make a ton of sense there, especially if he'll sign an extension. Then obviously they already have Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin, and Samuelson. They would get Hanifin to kind of lock up that top 4. They move out Jokiharju. They have some other guys there like Johnson and obviously Clifton, who can play your bottom pair for right now. They have some other guys coming up through the ranks who can eventually fill those spots as well. And to me, it's a good deal for Buffalo. I don't know if the Flames get a good enough return, but it's a start for sure. Again, let me know your thoughts on that trade package down in the comments, and let me know. Do you see Carter Hart going to Montreal? Do you see Noah Hanifin going to Buffalo? If you don't like those trade proposals in this article, let me know what you think is a more reasonable trade proposal in the comments below, so we can let the community see it and kind of discuss it further. So that's all for today. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.